Okay, good evening, everyone. So the board went into executive session at 5:35 p.m. with a motion by board member Christou and a second by board member Signor, all voting in the affirmative to enter executive session. And then at 6:05 p.m. with a motion by Mr. Christou and a second by Mr. Guidarelli, we exited executive session at 6:05 and all voting in the affirmative. I do believe the board is going to go back into executive session later this evening after our board meeting, and they will have to make motions at that time. I may or may not be here when they do that to go back into executive session, and then they'll be coming back out here after they're done, just so you know the process, after executive session to close the meeting. So, good evening again. I'm going to call the October 27th, 2021 meeting of the Rotterdam Town Board to order. Ms. Mark, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christou?
Present.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Present.
Mrs. Miller-Rivera?
Present.
Mr. Signor?
Present.
And Mr. Thomason?
Present.
5 present.
Would you all please stand for the pledge? Joe,
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also, just, I see, and again, I gotta be honest, I sometimes have difficulty really recognizing people with their masks on, but I just want to make mention, if you haven't been to a meeting and you want to speak under public comment privilege of the floor or for a public hearing, this evening, there is a board, clipboard over by the door. Please just put your name and information there, what public hearing you want to speak about, or what you want to do, whether it's public comment privilege before, that kind of thing, okay? So just a couple of announcements. Everyone knows when Halloween happens, because it's every year, October 31st. So from 3 to 7, we're asking for our community to begin trick-or-treating at 3 o'clock and to cease at dusk and no later than 7 p.m. You can find links and corresponding information on the town's website at rotterdamny.org, the town's Facebook page, and the Rotterdam Police Department's website at rotterdampd.com. Veterans Day services will be held here at Town Hall Thursday, November 11th at 2:30 p.m. Again, Thursday, November 11th at 2:30 p.m. We will host a ceremony here that will take place at Town Hall. Social distancing and masks are required during the ceremony. And at this point, if it happens to be a nice day, we going to do it outside, or are we already planning to be inside? Does anybody know? No.
I don't know.
There wasn't a discussion on that?
No.
Sometimes that's how it happens.
There was info trickling in this afternoon from the folks that usually organize it. So
Gotcha.
I didn't see what the final decisions were.
Gotcha. All right, how are you, is the board going to talk about the preliminary budget? How are you looking to do that? Are you going to entertain here?
I have the department heads that they want me to read.
I'm
I
asking the board too.
just don't know what you want me to
I'm
do.
asking the board.
Okay.
Do you have a process for that yourselves, or do you want to?
I think we're gonna have the department heads
Yeah.
come up and address,
Okay,
those that are here that want to address the board first.
And then the people that aren't, they sent me emails and asked me to read them.
I don't have a problem. You have a
That's what
problem with
Kate
the
said to do, that's what she told me.
yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
No, I think that's fine.
Yeah. So, great. Okay, so I guess it's up to you folks to come on up and one at a time if you want to address the
Do I
board
want
on
to have
your.
the chief come up first?
Yeah,
Stand
might as
up.
well, yeah, whoever wants to come up first, and then, so we can get moving on the
Or do you want,
meeting.
or did Beth want to go first?
I don't know. She was here.
She's,
Oh, there she is.
She's in the hall.
Beth,
You wanna go first?
Go first? Sure. I can go
Okay.
first. Sorry.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, I didn't know if you guys had established.
I don't know
a
if it was
process,
really strict on how we wanted to do
so.
it.
Okay,
Right, I wasn't exactly sure how you wanted this approach, so what would you like discussed first?
Beth, if you could just bring that closer because I can't.
Do you want to start with the tentative budget that was already filed, or would you like to discuss the changes from that to the preliminary, since people have probably already read the tentative?
That sounds good.
I would say start with the changes in the
Okay.
preliminary.
So you'll notice on the, from the tentative budget, the things that changed going into the preliminary, we made a correction, working with the police department to better reflect the actual cost of the detective's pay. We had inadvertently left out the shift differential, which Deputy Chief was so kind to point out to us, so we repaired that line. So you'll notice that that one has gone up a bit. The other thing that was done from the tentative to the preliminary was the addition of unrestricted fund balance as a revenue source, using approximately 1/4 of the fund balance of each of the funds to supplement the revenue lines in order to ensure that the town remained under the tax cap and to lower the tax rate accordingly. The remainder of the lines from the tentative to the preliminary draft have stayed predominantly the same.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Greenwood?
No, but I'd like to thank Ms. Greenwood
Yes.
for her diligence and going through all these finances that were bestowed on her and trying to get everything organized for us and helping us throughout this budget process.
And thank you for meeting with myself and Mr. Gittarelli at your home yesterday at 8 o'clock after you had just come back from serving our country.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief Braun?
Good evening. I'll just briefly go over and discuss what constitutes the bulk of what our budget is. So I'll just go through some of those items now. The 2022 tentative budget calls for 42 sworn officers and 3 civilian personnel. Current staffing for sworn officers stands at 40. With the anticipated retirement of an officer in December of this year, we will be down to 39 officers. The next academy begins in January, and with the required training both at the police academy and field training back at the police department, a police recruit does not become part of what we consider our manpower for approximately 9 months. So we're looking at September of next year before we're back up to that number of 42. So again, with that, we'll run short until September of next year. Short staffing leads to increased overtime costs, officer burnout, and increased response times. Just as an example of one of the effects of being short-staffed, our mandate hours, which we keep track of throughout the year. And I'll just explain what a mandate hour is. So mandate hours are hours when we have to require an officer to work instead of them volunteering to take overtime shifts. Just as an example, I'll give you what the mandate hours were for the past 3 years. Year to date right now, we are at 329 hours where an officer is mandated to work. In 2020, there were 5 hours that were mandate hours, and in 2019, there were only 32. So that's just an example of where we are and what being short-staffed right now is causing. To further some of our personnel at the department, as part of Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 203 and the police reform process, the police department has committed to increased training for our officers. With that, we have created a training sergeant position and staffed that with an officer who will track training hours for all officers and seek out training offerings that will meet the goals and objectives of the department. With the addition of a training sergeant, I will be able to increase training hours, but try to keep costs down. Just to give you an idea of what it takes for me to get every officer in the department trained on one 8-hour block of instruction, for example, range, that takes me 2 weeks to get every officer in the department trained. Obviously, I have to get that training scheduled, but I also have to schedule the shifts, throughout that same time. And we also, when we schedule training, we also try to do it with as little overtime as possible. I've also assigned a community officer to plan and look for ways to increase engagement within the community. This is not a full-time position, and it's not only one officer. We do have several officers who participate in planning and participating in that. Just an example, National Night Out, which was one of the first events planned, took place this past August and was a huge success. This event was a large-scale event in which a majority of our officers participated in some way. We do have an upcoming event. It's going to be Coffee with a Cop, and that will take place on Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the Stewart's Shop located at 2970 Gilderland Avenue. This is a chance for the public to have a positive interaction with a police officer and just come up to us and have a conversation about anything that they might want to. We will also be participating in job recruitment at Schenectady County Community College, and we plan on attending an event here in the next couple of months. One of the next items in our budget, which is I guess what would be considered the bulk of our budget, is our police vehicles, our fleet vehicles. In general, a marked, just by way of an example, a marked vehicle costs roughly $50,000. We get them on state contract, and we've been buying the Ford Explorer more often than not. They're four-wheel drive, and they're better in the snow. And actually, we've been noticing that we are getting more miles out of them than with some of the vehicles. So on state contract, they're about $36,000 to $37,000, and then it's roughly about $13,000 to outfit the vehicle with the lighting, with the cages, and other equipment that they may need. So in our detective division, we are currently short one vehicle due to a blown engine, and the vehicle is just not worth fixing. The four remaining unmarked vehicles that we have in our detective division all have over 100,000 miles. We do have a unmarked vehicle that we ordered early this year, probably in January, and we still don't have it yet due to some of the supply chain issues. For our marked patrol vehicles, I'm also short one marked patrol vehicle at this time. That's also due to a blown engine. It's just not worth fixing. So that leaves me with 11. 6 of those vehicles have over 100,000 miles, and of those 6, 4 of them are close to 150,000 miles. Obviously, with high mileage comes increased maintenance costs for those vehicles. We did just receive 2 new marked vehicles that, again, we ordered early this year. We should be able to put those into the rotation pretty soon here. They're getting outfitted with the equipment at this time. And obviously, with the lag time that we're experiencing in receiving new vehicles, it's important that we don't delay ordering them when we do need them. The next thing I'll talk about is technology. The police budget also reflects costs related to contracts, maintenance, and repair costs for various police technology that we have. Just by way of an example, body cameras, in-car cameras, street cameras, license plate readers. We also have 3 servers that we use for data storage. Those are pretty expensive and need to be replaced pretty routinely. Records management system and computer-aided dispatch. Many of the costs associated with these items are recurring license agreements, maintenance, and data storage costs that we have no control over. These are the items that make up the bulk of the police department budget. With the budget cuts from the proposed 2022 police department budget, the 2022 tentative budget for the police department now reflects a decrease of 2.26% from the final budget of the 2021 year. That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to commend you and the department for all the work that you're doing, particularly with the changes, or I shouldn't necessarily say changes, but the demands of the 203 executive order. And I think the community engagement is going to pay a lot of dividends for not just the department, but the entire town. So I want to thank you for your leadership on all of that, and the Deputy Chief Mail and your command staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Okay, who's next?
Larry, are you going next?
Larry Lamora, Town Rotterdam Highway Superintendent. On the budget, I have a couple items to discuss. On page 21, tentative budget. Our general overtime line's been dropped to 10,000 from 15. In 2019 was 11,025. 2020 was 15,770. And this year we're not closed out on that yet before knowing what the balance would be at. Our equipment line of general repair on page 21 was prior 50,000, now is zeroed out. As we know, equipment line, for highway department equipment is expensive. I'm kind of upset that that's zeroed right out. Our DA 5110, 4147 highway resurfacing line, which we were getting 100,000, which I always felt was never enough from the town, now is zeroed out to zero. Our blacktop mix general repair line was prior 60,000, down to 45,000. In 2019, we spent 46,937. 2020, we spent 49,807, 78. 2021, so far we spent 54,069. On page 22, highway machinery, DA 5130, 2,000 equipment for machinery in the highway department. Was prior always 50, and we always had to add something from our reserves to purchase anything along with that. That's been zeroed out. Our DA 5130, 4145 highway machinery repair was prior 110, now down to 90. In 2018 was 102, 943. 2019 was 97, 865. 2020 was 79, 554. And right at this time, in 2021, we're at the expenditure level with 2 months remaining yet, and bills still outstanding at 80,561. Page 23, our snow overtime, DA 5142, 180057, is going from 75 to 60. In 2018, we spent 66,023. 2019 was 74,417. 2020 was 42,685 from what records show. 2021 is not closed out yet because the year's not over. Them are some of the major things on the budget I've addressed with Mr. Signor and Mr. Guidarelli. And any more meetings we can discuss to straighten, maybe hopefully some of this out would be great. Our staffing is a problem at the highway garage. We're understaffed. I have a letter. Diane could read it. My glasses keep fogging up. It's hard for me to read that here.
Sure.
If you could read that for me,
Sure.
I'd appreciate it.
Good afternoon, all. As you are aware, due to the recent retirements, the highway department has lost 6 employees. The town board has opted to replace only 3 of the 6 employees, bringing the highway department staff down to 26 employees from 29. Over the last couple of years, the highway department has requested our staffing be increased to 33 employees, which would fully staff the department. However, last year during the budget process, the highway department only asked to be able to keep our staff at 29 employees, understanding the unique and unknown circumstances related to COVID. During the budget process for 2021, the highway department was informed that there was a DPW pool of employees that we would be able to pull from and to reach out to Mr. Mahar. The highway department did in fact contact Mr. Mahar. He informed us that not only was the DPW pool news to him, but he didn't have anyone available to help due to the fact that his departments were also understaffed. In conjunction with any bereavement, sick, and other PTO that is taken by an employee at the Highway Department, we are even further understaffed on those days. In order for the Highway Department to cover all plow routes in the town, our staff needs to be at a minimum of 29 employees. You may or may not be aware that for an average-sized snowstorm, it takes 3 to 4 hours to go through one plow route a single time. Each route must be completed on an average of 2 to 3 times each. During last year's storm, the Highway Department was contacted by the DPW Department, Police Department, Sewer Department, District 5 House, Firehouse, and the Ambulance Corps. All were asking for our assistance. We have always been able to provide that help, however, it was hard to do so this past year due to staffing shortages. Another situation you may not have been aware of during last year's 32-inch snowstorm, while plowing the route, one of our plow trucks was flagged down by a resident who asked them for help. The driver and his laborer in the truck stopped and administered CPR to the resident for 20 minutes while waiting for an ambulance to arrive. Sadly, the resident died at the scene. The point of this anecdote being, if the Highway Department continues to be understaffed and cannot clear the roads timely during a storm, the police, fire, ambulance, school buses, and general public will not be able to do their jobs effectively. The number of employees at 29 is the minimum number of staff needed for the highway to function on a daily basis, covering all essential work needed to be done, and it is absolutely necessary for plowing. After the snow stops, the work is far from being completed for this department. Sidewalks, underpasses, and crosswalks all have to be cleared. Snow removal must take place, all at cul-de-sacs and corners where plows have managed to push snow, which makes it dangerous for drivers, primarily to make it impossible to see oncoming traffic clearly. Town lots, the senior center, senior citizen center, the police department, the town hall, the highway department, landfill, and the Boys and Girls Club are all locations that must have snow removed. And to that, truck repairs, ordering sand and salt, and mixing those together. The highway department understands the financial strain local and state government is under. However, the town board must understand that public safety is what is most important, and in order to safely and effectively do our jobs in a timely manner, we need staff. It is no secret that the highway department and the town board has disagreed on many issues, but when it comes to public safety, we all can agree that we need to work together to find a quick solution. Our residents deserve more from all of us. In summation, the highway department needs a total of 29 employees to effectively snowplow on the top of the other essential daily tasks. My hope is that we can work together and find a compromise to benefit the town as a whole. Thank you for taking the time to hear my concerns, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, your highway superintendent, Larry Lamora.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Larry, could I ask a couple questions before you go?
Sure.
You mentioned that the equipment line was zeroed out. Could you tell us what you requested for that line?
For when, what do you mean?
You said the equipment line was zeroed
Yeah.
out. Do you remember what you requested?
We have, there was a 6-year plan that's been out with trucks listed and things of different nature of equipment.
I don't need the exact.
We have a,
Ballpark.
It's $100 budget.
You requested $100,000.
well, there's 2 different lines, 2 different categories. One's under the general. Let me see what it is. Highway machinery equipment. You on page 21 with that, or page 22? Both, there's 2 different equipment lines.
Give us the
there.
total you're looking for between the two lines.
Well, the 2 lines were 100,000.
50 and 50 or 100 and 100?
It was a 50 and a 50.
50 and 50. Okay, I
Right.
think that was, is that your question, Counselor?
Yes.
Oh.
And most times, whenever we do purchase something, like the last purchase that's, has a PO out on, is a truck was, $160-some thousand. So we always, usually comes from, reserve funds to add to them, lines to make up the difference, usually from the monies we save, possibly from the prior year, that gets carried over.
And Larry, what kinds of things affect your overtime costs from year to year? What are the variables in that?
Well, the fact is, the storms in the wintertime, they're unpredictable, you don't know. Summer times, we have, like past couple of days, we've been lucky, we had really minor overtime for running pumps and flooding issues, trees coming down.
Has there been any impact on your overtime costs due to COVID?
Not too much, no, very little, if any.
And you said your machinery line was zeroed out as well from 50,000, and you still use money out of reserves in addition to that usually?
Oh, always, yes, because 50,000 doesn't cover anything we buy, really.
How much, I don't have the tentative budget in front of me, I apologize, but what do the brush,
I have it if you need it.
what do the brush program usually, what does that run out of your budget? How much does it cost to run the brush program?
The
Brush
actual
removal.
brush program itself,
Yes.
From grinding, from start to finish.
Right, we discussed.
well, that's under the A fund line itself.
1.5, I think we talked about, Larry, there's 1.5 million roughly
To run the,
when we spoke, right?
oh, when we spoke, far as the highway department, far as running the brush,
Yeah, what does
one
that
year
look
we
like?
figured out just the labor costs for picking up the bags themselves off the back of the packers and the operators was 327,000 just as labor. And then you still got fuel costs, equipment repair costs and things like that on top of that.
So you're talking roughly $1 million soup to nuts, grinding everything to get that part of your job done.
Yes,
Would you
but
say
now
that's a
we
fair
have the
number?
grinding is subbed out now to
But there's
somebody
still a
else.
cost attached to that.
But still, that's on
Right.
top of that.
And Larry, right now, our tub grinder is pretty much almost.
Shot.
It's shot. And what's,
Right.
It's a giant
It's
thing.
on its last leg.
and what's it cost to repair, excuse me, to either purchase a new tub grinder?
Purchase a new tub grinder is about $765,000.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you might have priced out one that might have been like on the secondary market or something like that, if I'm.
Yes, I have, something that was halfway decent shape, we're still looking at 400,000.
And that,
And you're buying a used machine.
and then you're also on top of that, the cost to actually ship it, someone either pick it up and take it away from us, right?
Right.
And how are we doing that right now?
Well, right now, we have an outside firm coming in and they're grinding and hauling the material away. Matter of fact, they're doing it cheaper than it was costing us just to have it hauled away. When we were grinding, it was costing us the repairs of the machine, which there was constantly a lot of repairs on that, and they are very expensive. We had the cost of the fuel at time, myself was transporting fuel down there, almost 100 gallons every other day. And then you still have the manpower itself to run that machine.
And the determination to contract it out was because, and I'm just asking, because you and I spoke, because I'm on the committee.
Right.
We meet on a regular basis. Because we contracted it out because it was a lot cheaper to do it this way than it was to have to.
Much cheaper.
Purchase a
I mean,
new tub grinder.
Right, because we
And-
were paying $550 just to have it hauled away per yard. This company coming in, they are grinding it with their machine, with their front end loader, loading the machine, grinding it and hauling it away for $533 a yard. Cheaper than we were paying just to have it hauled away.
Okay, and if we don't do it this new way, with the contract that we have now, and in order to provide this service to the town, we're gonna have to purchase another tub grinder, right?
If we.
Yeah.
We went back to doing it in-house.
Right, we're back to doing it in-house with cost, right, almost, $1 million, you're talking $765,000, and that price was from last year or the year before.
Right.
And then as things have been progressively going up, we'd have to have
Let
that
alone the
priced
wait
out
time.
again, we might be at 800,000.
And we're little of the wait time for it.
And the wait time for it too also.
And I think we talked about, this tub grinder, you pretty much repaired as much out of it as you could over the last 20
Quite a
years.
bit, we're literally just waiting for the motor to blow up, we've had to repair the bell housing's been snapping off the engine
Yeah.
block itself. The expensive and the wear on it are very high. It's at the point right now, we just like to save it just in case of an emergency, if something, if you really had a disaster with storms and we had to grind some materials up and needed room, we'd still have it at this point right now, but we wouldn't even know how long it would last.
Thanks, Larry, I appreciate
I
it.
mean, it is a 1993 machine,
Right,
you know what I mean? It's several years old and they are a very high wear item type machine.
yeah, I think I just wanted everyone to know what the cost it is to do it in-house versus what it costs us to farm it out.
Right,
Thank you, Larry.
yeah.
Mr. Lamora, you said you need, in the statement, it said you need 29 employees
Yes.
in order to man a snowstorm.
Right, to
How many-
fulfill all plow routes, there's 12 plow routes. It
Um,
makes 24 guys, 2 mechanics on the floor, and then you gotta have a front end loader operator, And then we have, usually I try to keep a dispatch, which is usually a senior crew member in-house at most times, or otherwise sometimes backed up. You'll have to get into a truck with a plow and go out and assist or help get people unstuck during a storm and things like that.
How many people do you have on staff currently?
Currently, we have 26. Right now, we are down 2 plow routes going into this season. If someone should, get sick or bereavement, last year, for instance, an employee came into work during a snowstorm, he broke his ankle right in the parking lot before he got in the back door. We lost him all winter time. Wintertime, you're gonna get sickness, especially with this pandemic thing going on. Every now and then, we could get up, someone was in close contact, or being quarantined for 10 days, things like that. I mean,
So you
29 fulfills every truck. When, at least with 29, if something does happen, somebody is out, if we lose one route, it's not so bad. But going into the season, already 2 below, and then if something happens to an employee, we could go 3, 4 below on plow routes, getting out there.
So at this point, you don't have enough employees to man your
12 plow
routes.
routes, right.
Yeah.
And if anyone's quarantined due to COVID,
Or injuries.
You're already down to start with.
Yes.
Do you know what the vaccination rate is in your department?
Who's been vaccinated?
Like a percentage, more or less, of how many
I'm
people
not
are
really
vaccinated?
sure what the percentage rate is at. I know I have been, I know a few of them have been, I don't know if it was half, quarter, or,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
Larry, I'm sorry, no, thank you for, you've got a couple of questions.
Follow-up.
Well, I've been-
Redirect?
Well, I think this is an important part of the process, so
No,
the
no,
public
just-
can see that we try to engage with every department to get, to walk a mile in their shoes and assess what their needs are.
Well, plus, I'm meeting with Larry on a regular basis
Right,
anyway,
we-
so
we have met with
we, yeah, so we know.
Three times.
we know what it is.
Yeah.
And Larry, right now, the paving you had like last year, enjoyed in the last couple of years, was 100,000, plus, how else do you subsidize it?
With our CHIPS funding.
Okay, and now at 0, with no paving in there, you have to rely solely on the CHIPS money, right?
Right, correct.
And-
Prior was always 230. This year, it was up, I believe like 96, almost $97,000, but that was came up with an increase, which we may not see next year. I doubt that we will, because it was last year when the government had put out money for infrastructure repairs, and it was passed down to the states and down to the counties and towns, divided up equally. So we were able to add an extra $90-some thousand to the CHIPS funding this year. This coming year coming up, I believe we're gonna be back down to our 230,000 on average. Unless the
Yeah.
government or, the president puts out another infrastructure bill to spend money on, to pass it down for us.
And just for everyone else's benefit, typical piece of equipment, like a new plow truck, how much would that run, all tricked out with all the, the hydraulics and the plow and the blade and everything?
New plow truck with salt sander, the plow and wing, you're looking at about $180,000. And that's a 2-wheel drive truck. 4-wheel drive truck, you're talking about $214,000.
What about a street sweeper?
Street sweeper, we have on order, I believe it's 190, around there.
Yeah.
Might be even more, I don't have the figure in front of me, but they're all expensive.
And for the record.
I mean, even new pickups today are $50,000. Go to the dealer, try to buy one today, you can't even get them, they're not even in stock.
And our highway superintendent does a very good job of checking out municipal auctions.
Yeah.
And sometimes he finds it, in fact, I just signed a PO the other day. He's diligent about trying to find, and he's mechanically inclined enough where sometimes he finds us some good bargains. And, somebody else's used equipment might get us 5 years and save us some money.
Mhm.
And maybe one last question.
Go for it.
Larry, at its maximum, how many employees had you had?
When I first walked in, took office in 2014, there was 33 employees punching in at the highway department.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it, Larry.
There was 33 employees punching in at the highway department.
All right, thanks, Larry.
Okay.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
In regard to the routes, you said there's 12 routes. When's
Yes.
the last time, with development and everything going on, when's the last time you designed the routes or
Assess them.
yeah,
Oh,
assessed them?
assessment?
Yeah.
Well, probably about 3 years ago.
Is when you came up with the 12
With,
routes?
yeah, the 12 routes we have, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Lamora, would it be fair to say that the budget, the tentative budget is, in terms of your budget, is bare bones, if that?
Yes, it is, very, yes.
I know we've been rough on your budget in past years.
Yes, in
so-
past years, I even agreed at times of shaving things to try to really, because I understand where we could save. I agree with that, and I understand that. But the most scariest part is not even so much equipment lines, this and that, but when it comes to this winter time and I can't man all the plow routes, and being short on that is gonna be scary, and it's like, all right, what section of town do I not do right away? You know what I mean, who's not gonna, is it gonna be, Colonial Manor, or Chalmette section, or the Town Hall section? It has to be chosen somehow, and then we're definitely gonna go into a lot more overtime, which is gonna be expensive to try to make up for it. And we always try to get out in front of the school buses, in a 3, 4-inch or 5-inch snowstorm, we're usually always successful in getting out in front of the school buses, so the roads are plowed for them, especially in the hill towns, where, like Gregg Road, Copeland Road, West Hill, even Lower Gregg Road. We always try to beat the school buses so they can have a safe ride up and back. When we understand that obviously no school when you have 30-inch snowstorm, but then the fight is really major there,
It can be just as dangerous on the slippery days that you guys are out.
Oh, absolutely.
Salting and sanding is the days we get 30 inches, because the kids are out getting the bus at 7 o'clock, so, and you know
Right.
they're out there.
Right.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else?
Larry, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay,
Larry.
thank you.
Appreciate your input.
Yep.
Good evening. Victor Moy, I'm the Director of Public Works. And so for budget concerns, we are currently looking to maximize our team, maximize the team's current operational qualifications. This will include getting personnel qualified to operate the wastewater treatment plant water certification, brakes, heavy equipment operation. Should also allow for the team to do more with the current personnel, with building in redundancy to what we currently have for folks. So the diversification of the skill set will also branch out into the maintenance and upkeep of our current infrastructure, with the end goal being that junior personnel are developed and trained so that we're able to step into other positions of seniority as needed based on the availability of personnel. So the things we're looking to do is qualify personnel on heavy equipment operation, get their license, along with the water license for responses to water breaks. So due to the short time of my employment, so I've only been with town for a little over 2 months almost here. I'm forming my initial observations and moving forward as I learned about the current town infrastructure, become familiar with all our potential risks and liabilities with the water and sewer systems. My intention is to put a plan in place to combat the age and shore up potential risks, and they're identified as I continue going through all our infrastructures. And this may result in potential longer-term planning to try and shore up these liabilities so that we're not facing any major spillages or future problems or interruption in service to water. So planning improvements with the wastewater treatment plant will result in the town being able to be ready for growth. Upgrades in the infrastructure of the wastewater treatment plant will allow for the town to provide public sewer to these service areas, and this, along with this, will increase the capacity and capabilities to process additional wastewater, and more importantly, plan and implement newer technologies that will allow us to be flexible in potential changes to regulatory requirements. Things such as like being required to remove antibiotics and or antidepressants from our wastewater is something that's probably in the future. So our current plans for infrastructure upgrades to the wastewater treatment will facilitate those items specifically. In the area of the human capital personnel, so we're mitigating the cost of our engineering consultant section. So that is currently one of our larger items that we have in our line items for our budget. For this, so my intention is to engage. I've engaged with all the current engineering firms and made it my priority to ensure that we're getting the most return for our investment with regards to the current projects that are underway. The end goal being that we streamline the process of projects so that we're able to maximize that front and not actually waste any time or effort with the projects we're pursuing, so they give us the maximum return. So due to the current number of projects, the outside support is unfortunately necessary to meet our time goals. in order to get all of the grants and monies that were being used to fund the projects, so that way it doesn't have to come specifically just from the town. We can use the state and federal government as well to help us out with that. And then more focused efforts are being developed to help us with lowering these costs, where more level loading and more level loading approach is going to be taken, so that we're able to have we're going to be optimal capacity, so that we don't have 17 projects going at the same time and really kind of spinning on wheels, or some they're not being progressed. Further options that we're also pursuing is soliciting engineering support on an as-needed basis versus hiring a full-time town engineer. This can mitigate the cost based on some of the projects I've already seen. We can basically spend much less compared to the full salary of that new individual. So for equipment and tooling, so we're established a new baseline this year. We did spend quite a bit in 2021. That did set us up for our current equipment and tooling needs. And the tooling and updates to the existing equipment were done to support the current town needs, just based on the number of parks we have, the age of the previous equipment that we had. It was just time to kind of get some of those mowers updated, so it was a nice, safe piece of equipment to use and operate. This investment has established a solid foundation, and my intention is to use a 5-10 year plan to aid in keeping equipment operational and phase in modernizing plans, so that we're not having to spend and figure out how to budget for a new piece of equipment every year, basically, instead of every piece of equipment every year. We can drastically reduce that cost and take bite that elephant down one piece at a time. I'm working with other department heads and other cost-lowering options to consumables. This is items such as the consumables for like the mulch for playground and whatnot. That doesn't seem like it seems like an innocuous cost, but unfortunately that's actually quite a large chunk of our consumable budget for things that we have to go and do. Other things we're pursuing is looking to see what we can do for repairs for existing equipment to make it safe for use, and/or the option to remove it temporarily while we're actually repairing in the shop. That way it doesn't pose a hazard to the public or whatnot, and by having to go buy new equipment overall. We did also have a very large purchase this year with regards to that. I'm hoping to make that equipment last the life that's expected. I believe the brochure said it's good for 10 years, so looking to get at least that out of it, if not some more. So the other item that we're looking to do is bonding for a jetting truck to allow for faster response, minimizing the chance for injury to personnel and/or gas or other utilities. So this investment is used, this vehicle will lower the response time, minimize the chance for damage to other infrastructure when combating line breaks, and increase the productivity output of the main tasks. I haven't seen this thing in action. This basically cuts the work down to 10 to 15 minutes. It usually takes the guys, an hour to two to just excavate and get to get to the dig point. Much less having to come back to actual water intrusion coming into the area and getting that dewatered and put in a condition where they can safely put a patch on and make sure that we maintain that safe drinking water requirement. So the other side of this is because this machine allows us to quickly progress through the break, we can now actually increase our productivity and be able to get through more of the hydrant repairs and/or other valve repairs that we need to do. There are some, we've currently started formulating a list with regards to our isolation valves that are trouble children that we need to either go and address and replace and figure out a replacement plan, or at least some kind of maintenance to get them functional in 100% status so they can provide good isolation, get them cycled. This is still in its infancy, where we're looking to continue to progress it and have a good tracking mechanism to document those deficiencies and what we do for exercising those valves. With any expenditures that are proposed, they're being assessed to ensure that the smart investment of the funds is something that that's our working motto, to intend to go forth and understand what it is that we're failing, whether it's a process issue, an equipment issue. If we're having a piece of equipment fail after a year or two, it's probably something we're not doing, and we're looking to identify that and ingrain that into the folks so that we understand that there's some after-use maintenance items that need to be performed, keep that machine in full functioning and standard. And we also intend to be frugal stewards with the monies that are afforded to us and the opportunities to maintain the town's infrastructure. And this is not to say that we won't make mistakes along the way, because obviously no one's perfect, but we will learn from those mistakes and we'll codify them and lessons learned and effort to prevent recurrence of that same problem. So currently right now I think I have 2 water breaks under my belt that have occurred. Both times the teams have been really great at responding. We did learn some lessons from those as far as the notification aspect of it, how to best get that notice to the public. And we codified that instruction or in the final reviews to get that issued to them and get them trained on that so we can use that as our going forward tactic, so that there is no kind of guessing or second guessing as to what our plan of action is going to be. It'll be a concrete, whether it's the most junior person or the most senior man on the scene. You ask them the question of what is their next step, they can tell you with confidence because they're going to have a procedure in writing that provides that. As far as the budget concerns, we did have to cut some line items with regards to some consumable materials specifically for the water sewer teams, but we are looking to mitigate those cuts by rebuilding any serviceable equipment that we're able to gather back from the field, taking it back to the shop and refurbishing that to a good ready condition status so that it's able to be reused again after it's flushed and cleaned. And again, we were fortunate this year. We were able to stock up on several consumable material items, several ones of pipe. All that stuff has been staged, prepped, and again, we're looking to make good efforts on that front, so we're not wasting time and not having people not do without water, because that's just not acceptable. So, I think that's really all I have for the budget concerns for our equipment. Should there are any questions?
Thanks for your input.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
The short time you've been here, you're doing a great job.
Thanks very much.
Steve, I have the department heads that want me to read it.
Yes, please.
All right, so, I had agreed that I'd step back up after we talked about all the ways we need to spend money for the town. I thought it might be helpful that the board members kind of got a chance to review all the ways that we are all working together to save money for the town and find money in places that we haven't been able to find that in the past. As always, I'm sure you're all aware that we are constantly applying for grants. There are several of them out there right now, some of which would, if we were able to get hold of those, that they would cover some of the equipment costs specifically for the Department of Public Works. The jet truck, we're looking to try to include that because it's quite an expensive item in the grant we're applying for to cover the costs of refurbishing the sewer plant. They've actually added that line item in there, so in hopes that we would not have to spend that money. We're looking additionally with the DPW at consolidating our water and sewer districts. Specifically, the sewer has a number of districts. I believe we're at 17 right now. The way it's been managed over time, as it's grown slowly, has ended up with a lot of little small disparate districts, and it makes it very difficult to manage them both administratively and fiscally, and it ends up costing the town taxpayers more. We've begun a process of reviewing the establishment of all the districts, taking a look at the ways to consolidate those so that we can streamline the ways that we service and administer them and save the town taxpayers some money there. We've also been working on debt consolidation for the town. We did one round of debt consolidation already this year. We have another one planned with our fiscal advisors next year. Because interest rates are so low right now, it's a really good time for us to do that as a municipality. So what we're doing is we're combining outstanding debt that we have, rolling it all together, getting it put under lower interest rates. So again, it's allowing us to pay less for that debt service and save more money for the taxpayers. Another thing that we've looked at with our fiscal advisors, recognizing that the CHIPS funding and the highway line are not adequate to fully pave this town, which does need a lot of work. We are working with the 10-year highway plan that the town board had done last year, and we've been working with the fiscal advisors to find a way ahead to bond in a sensible way, combined with some funding from the town annually and the CHIPS funding, so that the entire town could be fully repaved within that 10-year plan. And the bonds would be paid off within a 15-year time frame, so it would be within the lifespan of the roads. You would basically have the entire town completely repaved and paid for within a 15-year period. So I just wanted to make mention of that. I feel a little bad for the department heads that are always coming up and saying all the ways we need to spend money, because that's necessary to provide the services that are important to the people of the town. And I just want to make sure that the board is aware that all the department heads are also working very hard to find ways to work more efficiently, more effectively, and to do it for less money for the taxpayers. Do you have any questions for me? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
This is from Brad Canning, the assessor. For the 2022 town budget, the Department of Assessment has requested no increase in expenditures in most lines, with the exception of salary, which have been requested by any contractual increase in consultant. We are requesting funds be set aside for potential reassessment project that could begin in 2022 and be completed in 2023. Market conditions over the past 4 years have shifted the tax liabilities within the town. There are properties paying much less than their fair share of the tax burden. Assessment is significantly lower than the market value or recent purchase price. Currently, the town's equalization rate has fallen to 95% and will continue to fall if not corrected. This means we are assessing properties less than the market rate. Also, there are commercial values that need to be updated. Apartment values are based on 2007 rents. There is a lot of value that is not being accounted for and shifting the tax burden unfairly. Brad Canning, the assessor. This is the receiver of tax, Diane Martin. The receiver of tax office salaries are determined by the current contract. From a customer service aspect, when we are in one of our 3 annual collections throughout the year, residents would benefit from the addition of a 4th employee. This is an extremely busy office at those times, and we do the work of 4 people. The tax office equipment line is $700, which this office doing every aspect of the collection in-house, from running the roll to printing and folding the bills. We never know when our equipment will need to be serviced or replaced. The tax office supply line has already reduced from $500 to $300 for the 2022 budget. Tax and telephone alarm line was already reduced from $2,400 to $2,200 for the 2022 budget. The alarm is something that cannot be eliminated, as this office during collection times has large amounts of cash. Tax collection mileage line is $25. You may remove that line, as I drive myself to the bank and 6 times a year to the post office in Albany for our collections at no charge to the town of Rotterdam. Tax public information display ads was already reduced from $450 to $350 in the 2022 budget, as I utilized the town of Rotterdam's website and Facebook page. Tax repair machine contract line was already reduced from $1,750 to $800 in the 2022 budget. The tax membership dues line is $25. You may remove that line, submitted by Diane Martin, receiver of tax. And then there's just one more from me. For the 2022 town budget, the town clerk's department has requested no increase in expenditures. The only lines are the contractual salaries increase for the clerk and the deputy town clerk for the office. The town clerk's office is always a very busy office, and the 2 employees are needed along with myself full-time. Thank you. And that's it.
Okay, any discussion amongst the board members?
I'm gonna go to the board.
Good.
Is there anyone that did not sign up on here that wants to speak? And then if there's some kind of people think they have to sign in just because they're there, is there anyone that wants me to take their name off because they just signed in? Thank you.
So the only comment I'm going to make has to do with forecasting the future of the town, and that is that I know I've made some I'll say unpopular comments when it comes to different departments, and overall other communities have one consolidated, if you will, Department of Public Works, which includes water, sewer, and highway, parks, buildings and grounds. It's a way in which labor and equipment can be better utilized for the community. We have, it looks like 2 different tax rates. In other words, you have a town tax rate, and then your or administrative or A rate, and then you have the D fund or the highway department. But when you get your tax bill, it's one tax rate. In order for the town to operate more efficiently, and to not only utilize labor better, but equipment better, the town really needs to move away from some elected positions, frankly, and get into appointed positions, and more importantly, have those people be more responsible and accountable to the board. And I'll be saying more about that after January, frankly. I just want you to know. Otherwise, what's going to happen is whoever's on the board is going to continue to have going to be put at a disadvantage in trying to keep costs low. And when I say low, giving pay increases where necessary through contractual obligations. But the bigger pieces of this is that there's a whole other side of the equation, which the town employees have to help, and many of them do. And what I mean by that is they're very, very cost conscious. They're very, as Victor said earlier, frugal. He used that term, and they are. And I think sometimes too frugal, frankly. So over time, more accountability has to be pushed to the board for a lot of the operations of the town. While you may think that it appears as if we control, if you will, everything that happens in the town, we do not. What I mean by that is you have independent elected officials, and sometimes, unfortunately, they do whatever they want within the confines of their budget. And the board needs to act more diligently to rein in basically inefficiencies and ineffectiveness of elected officials in particular. And it's very, very difficult to do that when you have politics come into play. So, frankly, I'll say it like this: being honest is very, very difficult, and that's what cost me. And so I'll just leave it at that. And I will. You'll hear more from me after January, because I will do it in a very professional way, in a way in which the public and the board can hopefully take into account, take advantage of the knowledge that I have, and do it in such a way that does not negatively affect the employees in any way, but also positively affects the community, because the town has to grow in order to keep tax rates in check. The town cannot just plod along and think that development doesn't need to happen, or people talking about having moratoriums or other things that, when it comes to large scale, I'll call it like it is, large scale retail development, like in the past, that was always a difficult decision for a lot of people on the board and for people in neighborhoods. When it comes to housing needs, whether it's apartments or one-family homes, etc., it has to happen because people need places to live. People want to stay here. They want to live here. Rotterdam is a nice place to live. It is a family-oriented community, and we want to keep it that way. And the only way to do so is to continue to have town grow and provide jobs, and particularly for small businesses to be able to stay here. COVID taught us a very, very, very hard lesson. And regardless of how you feel about it or the politics of it, just please cast that aside for the moment. And just know that we've had a very, very rough couple of years. And sometimes people say things or do things that may not be, that you may scratch your head and question, why are they doing that or saying that? And I think that the bottom line is you have to know that sometimes people will make decisions based upon what's best for them in that moment, and not necessarily the long term. And I think we've seen that in the last couple of years, unfortunately, for our entire country, and in particular for those around us here. I want to go into the public hearings now, but the reason I'm saying these things is because all of this impacts taxes, all of this impacts the budget, all of these decisions that you make, that businesses make, that we make, impacts our quality of life in the town. And it's just not a simple thing to wave a wand and say, well, we can cut here, cut there. We don't do any of that lightly. We don't. We're looking to ensure that the town can continue to stand. Just as an example, when you look at the budget, and of course no one ever brings it up, but I'll just bring it up in this way. So we have our unified dispatch, which which is, in my opinion, a good thing. But we send a check to the county for $800,000 for that unified dispatch. So, we had costs here for the town, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what those were. I just don't recall right now. Before we went into this unified command center, and communication center, excuse me. And but now it's costing us $800,000 a year. So that's a big check to send to the county, but obviously we need that service, or else we don't have our response from our essential personnel here when it comes to ambulance, fire, and our police. So All right, let's move into the public hearings at this time.
Steve, I just have to ask three people, because they just put change of zone, I don't know if they want public hearing 1 or 2.
Okay.
Chris Malco, did you want to speak on public hearing 1 or 2? Just hang on, I just have other questions that I have to.
Mhm.
And then Carolyn Gebhardt on public hearing 1 or 2?
I'm sorry, I don't know which one is which.
One is to allow for change of zone by Brandy Cockfield of the 1049 Laura Street, and the second one is for the one at 2957 Hamburg Street.
2.
Two? Okay, and one more. Richard Paul, is it?
1.
One, thank you so much. Okay, so, let's see.
And I apologize, we'll make one more comment. So at 7:45, if there's a lot of discussion, if someone's speaking here, I just want you to know I have to leave the meeting. I've turned over the gavel to Mr. Christou here to continue on the meeting here this evening, so. Ms. Marco, public hearing 1, please.
Yep, Chris Melko, oh, I'm sorry.
Read- yeah,
I'm
read
sorry.
first, yeah, sorry. Come on up, but just wait for her to read
To
that.
allow for change of zone request by Brandy Cockfield at plus minus 9.625 square feet of property from single-family residential R1 to a two-family residential R2. The property is located at 1049 Laura Street, Rotterdam, New York, 12306, and is known as tax parcel number 48.20-3-34.1. Chris
So,
Melko.
Please state your name and address
My
for the
name is
record.
Chris Malco. I live at 2540 Pauline Avenue, which is just adjacent to that property. I've been there for 54 years. I don't know what the criteria is for your recommendation for zoning change, because I don't want to, talk about things that don't apply. That particular parcel.
Chris, do you mind covering, could you put your mask back up if you don't mind, please? Thanks very much, I appreciate that. I apologize. I know it's hard to talk with it on.
That particular parcel has been a real nuisance for quite a few years, and even more so since the building that was there burned, okay? And it took almost a year for that owner to clear that building. I've made numerous calls to Public Works to try to get that area cleaned up. Right now, today, the grass is probably this high. You sent a mower over to mow around on the town's property adjacent to that, so that when you come to the corner, you can see around the corner. That's how bad it was getting. And there's also a pile of trash sitting there, and there's garbage all through that lot. Now, I understand that this owner originally proposed a 6-unit there. So it appears to me that it's not going to be owner occupied. It's going to be strictly a rental unit. Not being owner occupied, we're dealing with people who, listen, the neighborhood's a nice neighborhood. Everyone around there keeps their property up, okay? Unfortunately, we have an 8-unit that's across that was built 40 years ago, and there's a lot of cars and traffic there. By changing this, I have the preliminary plan that was submitted to the town, okay? This property's address is Laura Street, but in their proposal, they want the driveways to come out on Pauline Street, the Pauline Avenue, okay? There's already a big enough problem removing snow there in the wintertime, and when you have two units, it's not the norm for there only to be one car in each unit. So they wind up getting parked on the street, okay? The other thing I see is they want to put this building there, it's approximately 38 by 57. Because they're a corner lot, they have 2 front yards. So they have to be 30 feet off of Pauline Avenue and 30 feet off of Laura Street. Mr. Paul, my neighbor across the street, will be getting up here, and his property is adjacent to that, across the street. With this structure there and the driveway and pavements, there's about a 2.5-foot grade difference from Laura Street down to Mr. Paul's house. They say on this plan that that's going to be wastewater management area, which means they're either going to build it up and all the water's going to go on his property, okay? It just doesn't, a one-family owner-occupied property there, a house there, residence, would be perfect, okay? And the people are gonna, that's their house, they're gonna take care of it. We've had our issues with, you know, owners not occupying multiple family housing. And, I mean, we've been having our issues over there. I mean, a few weeks ago, we had gunshots there, you know. We've been there for so long, it just, you know, I would hate to see an owner who doesn't live there rent these units out and then not maintain it, and the record that owner's been showing us right now is they don't maintain it. You know, they don't come cut the grass, they don't pick up the debris. Now, I don't know how the debris got there or didn't get there, but it's their property, it's their responsibility to keep it cleaned up. So, I'm against it. Okay, I'm against changing it to R2 from R1. I don't know if there's anything else I can add, or...
No, you know, so we hear your comments, and that's what this is for, so because I haven't seen it here before. You know, what you've done is sufficient to give us comment.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Now,
Yeah.
when does this recommendation come from the board?
Well, the board would, if the board wants to entertain, when I say it like that, you'll see this on a future agenda for a zone change.
Okay.
And so you'll see that noticed.
Okay, and then from here, it will go to the zoning board?
It would go back to the planning commission,
Oh, back to the planning.
back to the planning commission, right,
All right.
right.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you,
your
sir.
time.
Appreciate your time.
Richard Paul?
So just, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, so we give 4 minutes just to speak here. What I'll do at 3 minutes is raise my hand if I can get your attention. So you know it's 3 minutes, and then I'll raise my hand again at 4 minutes and just ask you to finish up your comments if you have them. But you were good for your time.
Richard Paul, 2543 Pauline Avenue. I'm here about the house on West Street. I was there, I've been there for 60-some years. The neighborhood has always been good. I've lived in Rotterdam since I was 13 years old. I'm 81 years old now. And I have kept my property up. I have on the right-hand side of my house, I have an apartment house. They're non-resident. She lives in Pennsylvania.
Is that the 8-unit that the gentleman was talking about? Or is that
No,
a
that's the
different
one that's already been railroaded through years ago on Pauline Avenue. We had no idea it was there, it was just built. The stone wall on that is falling down in my yard. Okay, she's non-resident. I've heard this isn't going to be a resident. I don't want another non-resident in the area. You can't get them to take care of their property. I've tried to help the lady out next door that owns it. Nobody wants to work for them because they don't know about getting them money. We don't need, I have been to Jimmy, the zone and building. I've been to him every year for the last 5 years. This house burnt on the June 20th, 2018. And I have some pictures of that on my pad, so that's how I know the date it was. Also, I'm retired District 2. My sons are both District 2, and it was hot. A single owner, or I don't even mind the duplex there, if it is owner resident. Because I want the property kept up. The property in back of me is a restaurant. I have problems with him. He don't live there, so he don't care what the back of his property looks like. He's got a fence that his plowman knocks down in my yard every year. They've looked at it and they said, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, what's happening in this town? People don't appreciate their own property. I would like to, I don't care if it's I don't like it on Pauline Avenue, the entrances, the driveways, because it's just gonna make that corner locked up. The Laura Street was changed to one-way because there was so many accidents on the corner. So that's a one-way street. The driveway should be on the front and Laura if there's gonna be anything. But please, make sure that somebody, I don't care if it's a duplex, let one person own it and you rent the other half. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Steve, that's it for public hearing one.
Okay, anyone else like to be heard on public hearing one this evening?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd just like to review a couple of things with Mr. Malcolm, Mr. Paul. So your main concern sounds to me is the fact that the current owner of the property who is requesting this zone change is not doing a good job of respecting the property and the neighborhood itself.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
He's owned it for 2 years and hasn't, and he came in once and mowed it. Town's done, mowed it a couple of times. I'm surprised the town didn't ruin all their equipment when they went up through this time, because I heard it in my house, bang, 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 when it hit the brush and the bags and stuff that was out there.
And above and beyond that 8-unit that Mr. Malcolm mentioned, there's another apartment building next door to you, sir?
Yes, next door to him on the north side, okay?
I'm across the street from Mr. Malcolm.
DPW has actually been there in the past to clean that property up, and they've billed the owners. Now, I understand this is a new owner there, new within the last year and a half or so.
You
Okay?
bought it on 320.
But the thing is, that property has always been neglected. When that house was owned by someone before it burned, it was okay. Then it became a rental unit, it went downhill, and things went bad after that. So that's our biggest concern, okay? Is that it's not owner occupied, it's not maintained currently, and we fear that it won't be maintained correctly later on.
I just want to make sure I understood exactly what your main concerns were, and you answered my questions. Thank you both.
Sir, you want to be heard on public hearing one?
Yes.
Is that true? Come on up and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Peter Sankey. I'm the engineer for the woman who's trying to get the zoning change. So, yeah, like we said, she was hoping to do a six.
Sir, if you don't mind, address the board and just speak into the mic.
Sorry.
It's okay. Sorry.
Yep. So she was, like we said, trying to get a 6-unit there. She is a new owner. It's been about 1.5 years since she's owned it, so she really has nothing to do with what happened, in the distant past. Whatever reasons for not cleaning up what's there now, I don't know. I haven't spoken to her about that. I didn't realize that there was garbage there and, tall grass and stuff like that. So I will speak to her about that and see what the situation is. As far as the driveways, that is negotiable. As far as, we're willing to put the driveway, whatever, makes the traffic pattern work the best. And, the duplex that she's proposing, it's a very nice, I actually have some, mock-ups of it. It's a really nice, modern-looking building. I don't know if it's something you can...
Sorry, you can keep that for the planning commission.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So it's not, like, we're not looking to put some sort of cheap house there that, is gonna get run down and not taken care of. And, I know the history of this property is not good, but, she's looking to change that at this point.
One of the concerns, one of the gentlemen brought up was potential stormwater runoff. In your engineering submission, will you have some sort of validation of some sort of stormwater retention to make sure that it doesn't
Yes.
run onto an opposing property?
Yes, yeah, what he had mentioned was basically a stormwater management area, which will take the stormwater from the roof and treat it, basically.
And you'll show that on your submission?
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on public hearing one this evening? Anyone else like to be heard on public hearing one? Mr. Paul, do you mind? Go ahead. You just have a quick question?
No, I just wanted to say, you said storm management. Pauline Avenue is always flooded. You're gonna take a duplex or a bigger building and put more water down Pauline Avenue or Gilderman Avenue, which both floods?
Okay, thank you. And we'll bring that up.
We'll make sure the planning commission is aware of that concern.
We'll check that too.
A single family would have a similar roof coverage as the duplex that we're proposing.
Which is true as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Good, thank you all for your input.
Anyone else like to be heard on public hearing one? Anyone else like to be heard on public hearing one this evening? Okay, I'll declare public hearing one closed and go to public hearing two, please.
to allow for a change of zone request by Castor Management LLC from retail business B1 and one family residential R1 to multiple family R3 for a 0.89 plus or minus acres of property at the rear of a plus or minus 1.21 acre parcel located at 2957 Hamburg Street and known as tax map parcel number 59.19-1-9.1.
Molly Collins.
Molly Collins, 2241 Amsterdam Avenue. I'm here tonight to speak against the apartment at 2957 Hamburg Street. The Planning Commission has given it a 6-to-1 negative recommendation. The petition that I handed to you at the public hearing for the apartment complex at 2625 Curry Road also applies to this complex. While I was walking it, it came before the Planning Commission, so I advised the residents that this was also going to the Planning Commission. The 239 residents who signed those petitions are tired of the amount of apartments, not only so close to Curry Road, Hamburg Street Circle, but throughout the entire town. These petitions represented residents from 57th Street, located from Curry Road to Rotterdam Junction. I can list the reasons why: increased traffic, strain on our aging infrastructure, impact on our school districts, 340 apartments already located within 0.6 of a mile, quality of life. You've heard them time and time again. But listen to your own planning commission, and I quote, "Too dense for the lot size." Some on this board seem to think these developments add to our tax base. How is that possible? Net Zero in Florida just had their assessed value reduced by nearly $7,500,000. How's that a win for the town? I went to the Comprehensive Plan Commission meeting last night. You requested by resolution that they weigh in on the project for 2625 Curry Road. Will you be asking them to weigh in on this project also? I could even see if your resolution had asked them where they thought R3 zoning could be applied, but specifically it asked about the 2625 Curry Road project. You know, developers do have a choice. Why not grant them an R4 zone with smaller lots and smaller homes? Retired residents, couples starting out, or even small families would be able to afford them. Kingswood Court is a great example. I'll tell this board what I stated last night. If you're going to ignore the Planning Commission's decisions, then why don't we disband them? Planning Commission and the residents have given these apartments a negative recommendation. What else do you need? Thank you.
Ms. Collins, do you know who happens to live on Kingswood Court by any chance?
Yes,
Who's
your
that?
father lived there, and now your brother does.
My father, now my brother. Thank you.
And it's a nice little development.
It is. Thank you very much.
Gail Mahalik.
Hi, I'm Gail Mahalik, and I live at 1104 Eugene Drive. As a resident of Rotterdam and living in the adjoining neighborhood on Eugene Drive, I'm here tonight to voice my concerns and opposition to the change of zone request for the multi-family residential apartments proposed at 2957 Hamburg Street. Within a mile of the proposed site for these 20 apartments, there are already 10 different apartment complexes, with another approved for Curry Road. Additional multifamily apartments, like the one proposed at 2957 Hamburg Street, would only add to oversaturate this area within Rotterdam. The additional traffic from these apartments would increase an already high traffic volume area of Hamburg Street and Curry Road, and would create cut-through traffic within the surrounding neighborhoods. As I've mentioned before, people find the easiest route to get any place. And if that goes through somebody's neighborhood, they don't care because they don't live there. These neighborhoods are where we walk with our children and pets. In addition to the increase in neighborhood traffic is the density of the proposed apartment structures and necessary parking within a relatively small, narrow area of Rotterdam. It appears to be an extremely limited space to accommodate the apartment structures, necessary parking, and required buffer area from the surrounding neighborhood. The board's consideration and approval of this change of zone request for 2957 Hamburg Street would not align with the recommendation of the Planning Commission for this item, nor would it reflect the 77% of Rotterdam residents responding to the Comprehensive Plan Update Survey who indicated they were opposed to more high-density multifamily structures in Rotterdam. Please listen to these concerns and recommendations when making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else? Public hearing.
Rebecca Phillips.
Hello, Rebecca Phillips, 21-year resident at 1002 Eugene Drive. I just want to reiterate the concern for traffic with this issue. My other concern is you have the vacant lot where the bowling alley was and the new business that appears to be coming in with Joe's Pizzeria, and the concern for traffic and going through the neighborhood for those two possible business areas. It's just in the 21 years, the amount of traffic that comes through there and the speed and the rate has increased without these three major residence businesses. So my other concern would be environmental, since my property butts up against it, would be the concern for where the snow is going to be pushed for your parking lots, the lighting. Is there gonna be, I would imagine, my backyard will be lit up constantly, and things like that. So I would like you to, I appreciate your concern and consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
John Pickup.
How you doing? I'm John Hitchcock. I'm with AVD Engineers, and I'm representing the applicants tonight. I just wanted to talk about a couple of benefits to the town this change of zone can do for this property. Hamburg Street is a business area corridor with multifamily, residential, and business, and I think Mr. Supervisor said it pretty well at the beginning of this. You need families to come in, or residents come in for the businesses in the town to grow. These apartments will be in walking distance of all these businesses, that these new residents will come and patronize these local businesses in the town. These apartments will provide a transition buffer between the residential and the commercial in the area. And just to touch on the traffic, because I hear that's an issue. An apartment complex this size generally will produce like 3 cars every half hour based off the international or transportation engineer manual. 3 cars per half hour during peak hours. So we're talking 7 to 9, the busiest hours, people going to work Monday through Friday, etc. So it's not going to significantly increase traffic in that area for the apartments we're proposing. And we're proposing adequate parking spaces for those apartments on site. So I don't see parking being an issue. And if there's any questions, I'm here tonight, so I can answer them.
Let's allow other folks to speak, because we're doing public comment, or public hearing.
Right.
And I would add just ask the board not to engage too much, because we want to hear other
No,
residents.
yeah, I'll be here, so.
Their concerns. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if
Thank
the
you.
board has questions, they can maybe talk to you right after the meeting if you're going to say it.
It's Roseanne, I can't understand the last name, but it says apartment. Do you want for?
Yes, that's-
Okay.
Come on.
I wanted to make sure it was public hearing too.
My name is Roxanne Heller. I live at 83 Oakdale. Although this particular project doesn't affect my neighborhood, I'm worried that it's going to in the future. Once again, you all love to play with change the lot. Is it an R2? Is it a business 1? Whatever fits your fancy, you change it. It's about time you guys start listening to the people who work in this town, live in this town, pay the town taxes. These people have said point blank, they don't want it. Your own commissions have said they don't want it. Do yourselves a huge favor and just drop it. Regardless of what they say, it's still going to be a stress on this town, and it will continue to be a stress on this town. The more you put in, the more they put up. It's time to draw the line and just say enough. Yes, we can grow, but we have to do it in a smart way. We got bowled over when we put Stewart's in. We got bowled over when you pushed in CVS. It's time that you stop bowling over the people who live in this town and start listening to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul DiBiase?
Paul DiBiase, 2136 Amsterdam Avenue. I like what she had to say. It takes a lot for me to come to a board meeting. I haven't been one in probably 10 years. And for me to come out, it affects me directly. The gentleman who was just the engineer stating that there's business in the area. Last time I checked, there was a cemetery across the street. So I don't know how much business that's going to bring in. I'm opposed to it. Bottom line, I think Rotterdam is turning into the vistas in Florida. All we have is apartments. Apartments, apartments, apartments. Like the young lady just said, this got turned down by the Planning Commission, and yet it's still up for vote. Maybe I'm missing something. I'll be honest, I haven't been to a meeting in 10 years. I'm very busy. I don't follow what goes on. Can someone explain how this comes up when it's voted down? If I'm missing something, then I'll own it.
If
But
I
right
may,
now, it looks like
at the planning commission level, people do not get the opportunity to speak. This is part of the process to allow the public, like you, like the people before you, as well as the engineers and the people proposing the project, to voice their public opinion. It's all just a part of the process. This doesn't mean that this board is looking to overturn a recommendation. It's just another layer of the process to hear both sides and contribute that information. That's it. Just because it's here doesn't mean that this board is automatically going to say, well, it doesn't matter what the planning commission said, we're going to hear it out, we're going to do what we want anyway. It doesn't work that way. Doesn't mean that in 100% of the times the board has not sent it back to the planning commission or said, you know, with some adjustments, review it again. That does happen from time to time, especially on larger projects. But this is part of the process. The public is not allowed, if I'm not mistaken, am I correct? The public is not allowed to speak at planning commission meetings. The public is allowed to speak at town board meetings. So hopefully that answered your question.
yes, but again, if it's a recommendation from these folks who are supposed to be the pros, why does it still make it here?
Because if someone makes an application, we have to entertain it.
Okay.
Okay, that's how it's done.
Probably about 10 years ago, I was on a committee. We did a Rotterdam Day, and the only place we were able to have it was Mohannes, I thought it was pretty successful. That brought the community together, I felt, as little as it is. Niskayuna has Niska Day. Just about every surrounding community has something to bring the community together, and I'm all for it. I think we need to bring the community together. There's a church by Dunkin' Donuts right there, Helderberg, Curry Road. The parishioners go and rake the leaves, chicken barbecues. That's a small percentage of what we could be doing as a town. Right now, it just seems like we're throwing up apartments. We got space, why don't we look to that piece of land? Why don't we look to bring in a business that'll get some revenue for the town? You know, Starbucks, something, rather than apartments. We can get some tax monies. I just, you know, I want to just voice, like I said, it takes a lot for me to come out. It's probably 4 blocks away from my house. I don't really want to see it there. I don't think we need more apartments. Mr. Tomazone, you know, you said something, Rotterdam, nice place to live, and I agree when I moved in 31 years ago. But from the bottom of my heart, I think the sign should not say Rotterdam used to be a nice place to live. I don't feel that closeness anymore, and I hate to say it. I grew up in Schenectady. I moved to Rotterdam. I was proud. My uncle lived here. Rotterdam was great. You know, right now, you know, everyone used to make fun of Schenectady. Schenectady's blowing us away. I gotta say, they developed downtown. They have a day in July where they have a community day downtown Schenectady. We should look to bring people together rather than just throw up apartments. So I hope you're taken in consideration. I did watch the last meeting, and just about everyone, with the exception of 2 people, were against it. So I hope you take it in consideration and listen to the folks around there. Thank you for your service.
Mr. DiBiase, if could, on the community events, just to let you know, and Chief Brown is here because he was very influential in this along with his staff. We had that night out.
That's a national thing, though.
No, I got that. But the point of the matter is, you know, that's a start, and that's what we're working on here. We also had the bicentennial we were gonna, you know, and I was.
COVID killed that.
COVID killed that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna look to bring it back as soon as COVID lifts. But I want you to know, I was in contact with your band partner there about playing at this bicentennial.
And you know what? Honestly, anything I can do, we had the feast of Lady of Queen of Peace, but that's not a town thing. Great, it's in the town. But I think we need to put the brakes on a little bit. And I'm not trying to give anybody a hard time. I just think we need to put the brakes on. Let's not be so quick and throwing up apartments because we got room. Bring some business in. There's got to be a balance. Can't be like this.
Yeah, can't.
That's all.
Couldn't agree
So,
more.
again,
Yes, could you go to the town email and send me your contact information? I'd like to follow up this conversation with you.
send your.
If you go to the town email and click on my name, my email will pop up.
Absolutely.
All right, love to talk to you about it. Your contact
Try not to book too many gigs at the track this year when we have the bicentennial. Next year we have the bicentennial.
Overrated.
Carolyn Gebhardt?
My name is Carolyn Gebhardt. I live at 100 Fasula Boulevard, which is across Hamburg Street from this proposed building. And my 2 comments are, we have too much traffic on Hamburg Street now. Ever since they put the traffic circle in, you can't get a time when the traffic isn't going both directions, so it's very difficult to get in and out. Adding 20-plus cars is not going to help. And it seems like a very large building for a very small lot. To put 20 apartments plus parking on less than an acre seems inappropriate. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, Steve.
Okay, anyone else for public hearing 2 at this time? Before I say anything, because I apologize, I do have to go, but I just want to make a couple of comments for myself here on this. And when it comes to housing, so when Vista Square was being considered and built, there was a lot of conversation about traffic and it was going to impede people's ability to get in and out of their own properties on Curry Road or get in and out of Vista Square. And I know this may be anecdotal, but anytime I'm on Curry Road and I'm going past that location, east or west, I look to see how many cars are stacked there, and I never see more than 1 or 2. In other words, there's not traffic. That apartment complex has not generated quote-unquote traffic that's consistent all the time. You have a flow that happens, and the measurement is peak hours typically is what the traffic engineers will tell you. There are thousands of people living in apartments in our community. Some of these people have lived there for decades in these apartments throughout the town. They are people who contribute to our community. They are people who pay taxes through their rent. The conversation or the comments about schools and so on is always, I don't know how else to communicate this. And what I mean by that is it's not to be, I'm not trying to come across as assertive or anything like that. It's just that I find it very difficult for people to make comments without having when I say the knowledge, because and don't misunderstand me, if you're listening to other people that are influencing your decision making, so factually, the apartment complexes that have gone up in Rotterdam, if every one of them have more than a handful of children, they don't. They're not taxing the school districts at all. As a matter of fact, they are contributing to the school districts. And the people that I know who live in these apartments, especially the newer ones, because I just happen to know because people couldn't wait to get into them, just like they can't wait to get into Whispering Pines project, are all people who are from Rotterdam. They're seniors, they're people who moved back to Rotterdam because they couldn't find the apartment living that they wanted in Rotterdam, so they moved back from Saratoga, or they moved back from Albany. You know, the town has an obligation to consider, and that's what we're doing, and we're listening to what you're saying, but I also just wanted to get those comments out. And as far as, you know, responses around the comprehensive plan and so on, it was less than 300 responses. It's less than 1% of the town. Now, is that significant? No. To me, it's not significant. More importantly, there was not a measurement in those responses as to were they the same people responding to saying no apartments. They don't have that measure. I guess what I'm trying to find out from the community is it that, so you know, the conversation about businesses, more businesses, we'd love to have more businesses. COVID has, and other, if you know, technology, you can order everything you want online. You can order food to your home. You don't have to leave your house. Our buying habits, our behaviors are shifting, they're changing. And I gotta tell you, it's a big adjustment for me. Because every time I see another Amazon vehicle or FedEx or USPS or somebody on the street, I'm like, they can't we just go to the store and get it ourselves? So, you know, why can't you attract more businesses to the community? Well, one of the things that when you say about attracting more businesses, it's a multifaceted, if you will, conversation. Is it tax rates? Is it socioeconomics? Is it the lack of infrastructure? So you talk about wanting to rezone and having more high-density one-family development. You can't do it on septic systems. You've got to have sewer lines. So, as I said at prior meetings, that the improvements to the sewer plant are imperative for the town's future. You cannot fight that, or we will not grow the way we want to. You want more one-family homes, you got to have more sewer infrastructure. But you also have to have more land for one-family development. Because developers cannot make money. And so if there's no profit motive, and there's no other, if you will, balance to what it is that they're trying to offer us as far as one-family developments, they're not going to come here. Sewer lines are important. Having the ability for this comp plan update is important so that we can get the town rezoned in a way that makes sense for the future. If the town had done a comprehensive plan many, many years ago, you would not see these lots here and there that are maybe good for apartments, maybe good for a small drive-up restaurant or something like that, where it's just a drive-through, some mixed use. That large parcel where the bowling alley used to be, you know, and others, we're hopeful that we get a mixed-use project there, because it'll bring business and maybe some residential living in, you know, right on Hamburg Street or behind it. It's all part and parcel of people wanting to have a place to live and to work and to shop. You know, these decisions are not easy, and the town will, you know, take this up at some point in the near future. But I just wanted to get my own personal comments out there. I want you to know that when it comes to traffic, I understand the concerns. I do. I live on the corner of Paul and Repson Street, get traffic there all the time. AC Body Works moved into property that's zoned industrial right next to me. And that's fine, because that was property that was zoned industrial. They moved in. There's more traffic on my street. Does that mean that it's bad for the town? No. They drive slowly, they come in with their vehicles, they do what they have to do, they're conducting a business, and that's good for the town. People are working, we have tax base. But it's not just something that can happen overnight. This takes long-term planning. The town did not long-term plan. And that's why we're in the position we're in today, and that's why we get emotional about a lot of these kind of changes, and I get it. I just wanted to get my comments out there before I leave. I'm gonna turn over the meeting now officially to this deputy supervisor. And, and I just wanted to ask real quick, is there anyone else under public hearing two? Anyone else under public hearing two at this time? Anyone else under public hearing two at this time? Okay, I declare public hearing two closed and turn over to Mr. Krista. Thank you.
Ms. Marco, could you read public hearing 3?
Sure. To amend section 266-52 entitled Schedule 12, no parking at any time of the Code of the Town of Rotterdam to include no parking areas on Lilac Street and Lawn Avenue. And nobody signed up.
Okay, anyone wishing to speak on public hearing 3? Anyone wishing to speak on public hearing 3? Anyone wishing to speak on public hearing 3? All right, I declare public hearing 3 closed. Can we move now on to public comment privilege of the floor?
You're banging on the paper.
Sorry? What happened?
Public comment privilege of the floor?
Okay, yep. Molly Collins?
Molly Collins, 2241 Amsterdam Avenue. I know that what has been put out as the 2022 budget is only tentative, but I do have some questions. In an editorial this week in the Gazette, former council member Robert Bobruski asked where are the detailed financial reports usually issued each month. I would like to know if any taxpayer dollars have been expended on the proposed move to Viaport Mall. How can the residents of our town know where our tax dollars are being spent? This board proposes that all of these high-density apartments are going to help our tax base. Net Zero and Solara apartment complexes just had their assessment lowered by nearly $7,500,000. The town lowered Viaport's assessment by $12 million this year. The 2 RailX properties at the industrial park were reduced by $4.5 million. I don't think that these and other commercial properties have added to our tax base. While the big corporations and developers receive lower assessments, mom and pop stores continue to struggle with a proposed 27.4% tax increase. With the current budget, we have a revenue shortage. Look at what you have added to our budget in terms of new hires within the last 2 years. We have a public relations firm that we are paying $36,000 a year, a financial advisor that is earning $110,000 a year, a Department of Public Works coordinator for $125,000, a purchasing agent for roughly $48,500, a coordinator for the Park Senior Center and Summer Programs for $60,000, and tonight's edition of an IT project manager for $58,000. The total expenditure is $437,500. If you add in the expense of insurance and benefits, you can easily hit the $500,000 mark. Sadly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. None of these jobs are an extension of current employee duties. Last, can I ask what happened to the last page of the budget? By that I mean who decided to change it and what resolution was passed to accept the change. In the 2021 budget, the last page was easy for residents to read and understand. I think you have to be a public accountant to understand the meaning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Mastriani?
Hello, Joe Mastriani, candidate for town board for next year, reside at 1007 Princetown Road. I'm new to politics, and there's a lot about it that will discourage people from getting involved, but I think that's something that we need, and I'm in the food business, like the deputy supervisor. Great thing about the business that we're in is that you get immediate feedback. So Evan, if I sell you chicken and shrimp today, if it's cut wrong or something's wrong with it, I can respond immediately. Unlike someone who may buy a car, once that car is driven off the lot, you're kind of stuck with it. So what's good is that when, you know, the way our system is designed by, you know, campaigning and getting feedback from people, that helps, you know, keep ourselves accountable to the residents that we're supposed to represent. So some of the feedback that I've been getting is that people are frustrated. They feel disempowered. They feel like their complaints don't get answered. There is a lot of anti-apartment sentiment, and people feel frustrated when they feel like the project is going to go through regardless. You know, Mr. Thomasone makes a case, but you know, a lot of people bring up our town motto, a nice place to live. And you know, are we gonna keep that? We're kind of on a teetering point. I see a 27.4% increase for commercial property as like a huge crisis emergency number. The businesses that I've talked to in Rotterdam, and there's a lot of them, they can't even digest that. You know, I've known about it for a couple of weeks now, and it's a kind of an unfathomable number. I mean, that can erase your entire profit margin for the course of the year. I'd like you guys to give a little bit of what you envision for the town of Rotterdam going forward. How are we going to maintain a nice place to live by packing in apartments? And how are we going to attract businesses to our town at the tax rate that we're at? In 2008, the commercial taxes were $3.33 for $1,000 of assessed value. Now it's proposed for next year $8.98. That's over double. It's close to triple what it was 13 years ago, and it's taking advantage of. People feel taken advantage of. You know, there's businesses that are going to move because of it. I've talked to a business I'm not going to mention that hasn't paid their taxes yet because COVID put them in such a difficult situation. That sort of increase is going to hurt a lot of businesses. It's going to make businesses have just scramble.
You're at 3 minutes,
Yeah. I want you guys to answer if you can. Does government ever shrink? I mean, if our expenses go up because of labor costs, cost of materials, cost of goods, supply chain challenges, in the different economic circumstances, speaking on behalf of local businesses, we're scrambling, we're struggling, we're banging our heads against the wall. We're working until we're, you know, got nothing left in the tank. Is the town going to have to do the same thing? Is there, one of the only good things that's in this terrible economy right now is that everybody's hiring. So I can tell you that there's some great opportunities with some of the best people in various industries because everybody's hiring, everybody's looking for help. Is the town going to have to lay people off next year? Is that being looked at? I think Rotterdam should look at where we're at as a serious crisis moment. And we need to preserve a nice place to live, and we should get competitive with other municipalities in the area. Collaborate, but try and figure out how can we do things more efficiently. Bring the public in and have different working groups with different departments and say, how can we be the most efficient town in the capital district? How can we overcome this challenge that we're in?
You're beyond your time limit. 4 minutes is the time for public hearing.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Just a couple of quick questions. As far, not questions, but comments, you can sit down. The budget process is exactly what that is. It's a process. Okay, nobody approved or voted in favor of the budget that was introduced. It was a budget that was introduced. Part of that process is doing everything that you just mentioned, which we do every single time. It's slightly offensive that, you know, people get up to this dais and they pontificate
and make it sound like, you know, we're doing all this stuff without every single, I'm a business owner, okay? You're not selling chicken wings what you sold them for a year ago, you'd be out of business. You're struggling because your costs have gone up, okay? And people's revenues are going down, businesses' revenues, so is the town's revenues go down. Every little piece, it's a multifaceted thing. That's the budget process. We will sit back there between now and the November deadline, and we will go through every line item of this budget, like we do every year. We will, you know, you heard department heads. We give department heads an opportunity to get up here and tell them where they can cut back and how desperate they need certain people in certain spots. And then we as a board have to address that. So the board is doing exactly what, you know, your speech is demanding that we do. We've done that every year, every single year. It is very complicated, and it is a process that, you know, that no one here takes lightly. So, you know, I think that's enough said about that, but, you know, be leery of making assumptions, you know, without having your facts, is I guess what I really want to say. Anyway, moving on, Ms. Marco, anybody else?
Yes, I have two things I have to read here. Calvin Rugg of 1107 Sunrise Boulevard. Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend the meeting tonight as my son is receiving a promotion at karate the same time as this meeting. I would like to bring these three items up, if you could please read it. 1, can you explain the resolution item for the agreement by Barton and LaJudas? 2, is there a public session to review the process of the Barton and LaJudas study for the relocation town hall and police to the Viaport Mall? These plans have been available since August of 2021, but you have to file a FOIL request to see the plans. With such a major change to our town, I would think presenting to the public would be good for the sake of transparency. Major changes to our town have been presented at comprehensive plan committees. Would presenting this change fit into this committee responsibilities? I know the budget is a difficult item to discuss, but as I suggested in an email prior to the supervisor and town board, I would hope that you do not include $700,000 for the sale of the town properties in the 2021 budget. 2022, I'm sorry. To be committing the sale of these properties prior to the study being complete and presented to the public for comment does not seem honest, to be frank. 3, since the public has not been given an opportunity to review and comment on the proposed town hall and police building study at Viaport, please see my comments below by categories. General architectural comments. Police have to walk through entire police station to get to locker rooms. Will there be a secured parking lot outside with fencing? Where is the plan for the parking lot? Public Works employees and visitors have a long walk from main entrance, suggests relocating towards the front of the building where the police department is located and move police department around to the side facing the roadway entrance to the mall. Missing drinking fountains in police area. Drinking fountains for town hall are not compliant with ADA as they project into the walkway or the walking path for someone who is visually impaired. Quantity of judge offices is not the same. Revised plans to make sure they are the same. Ramps into and out of the raised areas for the court and boardroom do not seem to be code compliant for clearances at doorways. Fix ramps if needed, as this will impact the side of these rooms. What is the build out budget from the mall per square footage, class A, B, or C, according to BOMA? Since we might lease to own, hopefully we get class B at a minimum. How will building insulation along with air vapor barrier be added to the existing building to be energy code compliant? I am not sure if flexibility is built into the proposed plans, as individual rooms are not labeled. It would be helpful to annotate with the word office or future office. Flexibility was one of the reasons for moving out of the older buildings in town. Creating multiple enclosed rooms is what we have currently over 3 floors. I see the same thing in these plans, except the spaces are on one level. I do not see the flexibility, but perhaps the labels would help. Here are some examples of not being a flexible layout. In scheme 2, it appears that the patrol suite is not able to get larger and accommodate additional officers, as there is a corridor on 2 sides of the room if there was a need to add officers. No ability for muster room to grow, as there are spaces on either side as well. The locker rooms are locked in by hallways on 2 sides, but they do not have evidence storage. So if you move evidence storage, you can expand the locker rooms. With that said, there is no ability for the evidence room to grow due to proximity to hallways and locker rooms. Security. Are there restrictions for who gets to lease the space next to the police department? Suggest to add frisk search room at police Sallyport for privacy and toilet for suspects. Holding cells are located immediately adjacent to exterior door. Is this a good idea? This is an egress door that can only be locked with a time delay per the building code that anyone can override. Will bookings suite be staffed all the time, day and night? Would it be more logical to have patrol suite adjacent to holding cells for day and night, sergeant to have physical eyes on cells, or are you relying on cameras? Town court, board bathrooms in proximity to officer on duty and metal detectors. Should bathrooms be on the other side of the metal detector, or will you go in and out through metal detector every time? My concerns would be for the handing off of items in toilet rooms if both court and board rooms are in the use at the same time. Calvin Ruff. And then there's a Victor Murdoch. My apologies for not attending the meeting tonight. I'm not feeling well given the current pandemic. I felt it would be respectful to not attend tonight's meeting. Please read the following into the record at tonight's Wednesday, October 27th, 2021 meeting. To the town board. Disappointingly, once again, we see a requested zone change being advanced again by the Rotterdam Town Board after the Rotterdam Planning Commission forwarded a negative recommendation by an overwhelming 6-1 vote. Given the recent history with the 2625 Prairie Road discussion, you would think the town supervisor and town board would have shown a bit more discretion regarding this request, but no, here are once again debating another R1 single residential to R3 multi-residential zoning change that the town board knows the overwhelming majority of town residents are against. From the planning commission verbatim minutes, words like too dense for lot size, too many units or apartments are trying to get into a small place. It's very tight, were noted by the planning board members who voted against the proposal. More strikingly, one planning commission member put it bluntly, I don't like the spot zoning and it doesn't fit. As a reminder, 77% of the Rotterdam town residents who responded to the comprehensive advisory plan survey indicated they are against high-density apartment development. Given where we are in the town's comprehensive plan process and given that there is an election coming up that will see a new town supervisor and perhaps two new board members, I would respectfully ask the Rotterdam Town Board to show respect to the residents of Rotterdam and vote down the 2957 Hamburg Street and the 2625 Prairie Road request. Sincerely, Victor Murdoch. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Martin, for reading those both into the record. I'm going to suggest that we take Mr. Rudd's email and forward it to Bartlett and Judas. It sounds like Mr. Rudd is pretty knowledgeable.
Sure.
And I don't, what's that? Yeah, he's an architect. I think those are very good and very lucid suggestions.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time on that.
If I could, and sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but I had it, I forwarded it to Chief Brown, and I also forwarded it to Victor Moya.
Okay.
So just with a, take a look at this,
Yeah.
and so they have something on it.
Well, I think it would be good discussion at Bartlett. Does anybody have a problem with sending it to
No,
Bartlett? and Judas?
you know what, I didn't think to do that, and I have no problem with it. My first instinct was this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, I
you think you're
think-
gonna do it?
Well, no, well, I can say, my
Yeah.
first instinct was to send it to
Yeah.
Chief Brown and to Victor Moya.
Right.
And I apologize, I didn't really think.
But I'd like,
forward Bartlett.
my theory is while they analyze it, when they get together with BNL to discuss it, BNL will be informed what they're
Yeah,
discussing.
do we have the email for?
Oh, I'm sure we can find it. Yeah, so we'll take care of that, as long as the board doesn't have a problem with that.
I think he emailed
You
all
know,
of us.
and again, as far as Mr. Murdoch is concerned, the zone change is not being advanced. I think it is the greatest respect that we show our public by holding these public hearings and allow them, passionate as they are, their opportunity to speak on these topics. So, but again, I think I'm very grateful for Mr. Rudd's input, and I think we should take that into consideration as he might just see something from a fresh perspective, and it would be, I don't think there's any negative downside to it.
Not at all.
That's it, Evan.
Okay, let's get into the resolutions.
A resolution to appoint Darla D. Galata and Andrew Yamarno to the position of dog control officer.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move.
Motion by Councilwoman Miller Herrera,
I'll second.
second by Councilman Guidarelli. Any discussion?
Long overdue.
Absolutely. Are either of them in the building today? Well, I know these folks personally, and I'm sure they're going to do a very good job. Move for the question, Ms. Marco.
Mr. Cousteau?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
And Mr. Thomazone's absent. 4 yes and 1 absent.
Next resolution.
A resolution to appoint Henry C. Grubhart III to the position of IT Project Manager and Support Liaison.
May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilman Guidarelli,
A second?
second by Councilman Signori. Any discussion?
I'd like to comment in regard to this hire, because it was mentioned, all the hires we're doing. So this position is much needed. You know, we're in a different position from 10 years ago to right now with technology, and as far as number of employees and workstations we have, the numbers, again, from 5-10 years ago are just much larger. So we have needs, and I know a lot of people up here can attest to this. We have ongoing issues daily on workstations that don't work, software that doesn't work, network connectivities that fail, and right now we outsource a lot of this, and we're hoping to bring some of it back to in-house just because the time frames and to get things done, outsourcing, there's a waiting period a lot of times. It's not good, so that is the purpose of this hire. It will make us more efficient and will keep us up and running.
You know, and you know, part of the town's efficiency plan is to digitize a lot of our records. And you cannot do that without an IT person. And we need this, and it's, you know, we have some good forward-thinking hires in some of these new hires that, you know, people may not understand what the purpose of it is, but, you know, we're putting good people in place, and efficiencies aren't something that happen with the flick of a switch. It's something that you invest time and effort, and then, you know, you don't jump over dollars to pick up pennies. Is Mr. Gerhardt in the building?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Henry. Welcome. And if there's no other comments, I'd like to call for the vote.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
And Mr. Thomason is absent. 4 yes, 1 absent.
Welcome aboard.
Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations.
Got your work cut out
You
for you.
definitely have your work cut out
Yes,
for
he
you.
does.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for consent agenda.
I'll make a motion for the remaining resolutions to be part of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Miller Herrera,
I'll second.
second by Councilman Signori. Any discussion?
Did you want to give a brief?
Yes. Yes, I just want to make sure anybody else on the street,
No,
okay.
you can do it.
The town board will vote this evening on moving towards a public hearing on November 4th to discuss the upcoming budget. We are introducing today a preliminary budget, bringing the proposed 2022 budget under the tax cap. The pandemic and unexpected expenditures in 2021 has posed many hard decisions, as mentioned earlier, to be made in order to reach an austerity budget by November 20th. The town board looks forward to hearing from the public and the town department heads at the public hearing set to take place on November 4th at the Senior Center. We very much value public input as we move towards a 2022 operating budget. Again, part of the entire process. And it's an ongoing process. It was mentioned, how does government never shrink? Well, if you see in these two of these resolutions this evening, government does shrink because it's authorizing the supervisor to enter into two different intermunicipal agreements, which again, intermunicipal is something where, you know, services are shared, personnel is shared, and, you know, again, creates a long-term efficiency. Okay.
Can I expand on
Sure.
one? Thank you. I'm very familiar with one of the municipal agreements with the Schenectady County Sheriff. The reason I'm familiar with it is because as the public defender, what we are doing is we are working and entering an agreement with the Sheriff's Department to create what's called a centralized arraignment part. So now when somebody is arrested in a town, and we'll use Rotterdam as an example, the sheriff then comes and picks them up and holds them and detains them until they can appear before a judge. And it doesn't have to be the town judge of the town in which they're arrested, because they're going to rotate on a wheel, and they will be all sharing time and participating in this arraignment process. So now how that works is when Chief Brown's people make an arrest and bring them to the Sheriff's Department, well, now Chief Brown's officers don't have to sit there and babysit them, and, or have to spend overtime watching them until they can get away. So the sheriff's department now is going to do that, and now Chief Brown's officers can go back on the road and patrol and do what it is they're doing without having to incur any additional time. So that is shrinking government. And the other one was, okay, and I'm going to save my rest of my comments for at the very end, but that's what I wanted to explain. Oh, and we're also consolidating the fire district with the dissolving the Platterkill district and consolidating it and consolidating services between Rotterdam and Princetown. So that is shrinking government. And I think we also talked, and again, I'm sorry, I will wait until the end to make further comments. I want to finish and go through the resolutions.
You know, again, I just want to reiterate that we'll be voting this evening towards a public hearing on November 4th. We're going to discuss the upcoming budget. We are introducing a preliminary budget today, bringing the proposed 2022 budget under the tax cap, and I think that's important to mention. And again, just to reiterate, you know, the burden that the pandemic and unexpected expenditures has put on not only our town, but society in general.
Evan, I don't know if it's now to do this, but the long form of the resolution says 2021, so do you have to make an amendment to make it to 2022, or is it okay because you have the short form in 2022? I don't know.
It's a typo, basically.
It's a typo, but I mean,
Move to amend it?
Yeah, all right.
the short form says 2022.
Okay, just make the correction.
Okay, I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
But it was,
correction's there.
it was corrected.
Yeah, and maybe just not,
Not-
maybe it's
no,
just
not
not
the-
on the printout.
No, well, the one that's on the website says 2021. So I just want to make sure, I think it's got to go in the Gazette, and if I don't get to the Gazette
Right.
tonight, when
I would make the
Thank
correction
you.
and acknowledge that it's
Thank you.
2022.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Christo, I'd like to make a brief comment on the budget
This is
process.
2022.
So in regard to the budget, as Mr. Christo said, it's a process. The tentative budget was basically presented to the town board and to the public from the supervisor. And then from that point, it's up to us to go through the budget line item by line item, meet with department heads and see where we can maybe reduce some spending and maybe what revenues are out there that we may have not missed, but opportunities that we may not have sought out. So we have had quite a few meetings already, spent hours working on this budget. Larry can attest to that. Some other people can as well. So this process will continue to go on until we get to a budget that we adopt. But there's a lot of work left to it, and we are doing our job. As Mr. Christo said, we do this every year. We go through this budget, so we took the tentative, we look at it, and we fashion it into something that we can all live with and operate with. Thanks.
Let's move for the vote to accept the remaining resolutions as a consent agenda.
Mr. Christo?
To create the consent agenda, yes?
Mr. Gutterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
And Mr. Thomason absent, so 4 yes and 1 absent.
Okay, now I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Councilwoman Miller Herrera,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilman Signori. Okay, any discussion? Ms. Marco, call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes?
Mr. Gitterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason absent, 4 yes, 1 absent.
Okay, any committee reports this evening?
Just to remind, I think we pretty much have the bugs ironed out, but we're going to have our traditional Veterans Day celebration. I think we weren't quite sure, obviously it's weather contingent, so if it's raining, I think, and if COVID contingent, we'll move inside, but it's going to be 2:30, as it's always been, on Veterans Day, and I'm sure we'll get some more information out. I think we have one more meeting between now and Veterans Day to finalize that, but I wanted to bring that to people's attention.
Also, the chief mentioned coffee with a cop, and that's scheduled for Election Day. Chief, do you want to mention it again? I don't have the details in front of me.
Sure, so it's Election Day. It will be between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. At the new Stewart Shop located on Gilberto Avenue. There'll be several of our officers there available to speak with anybody from the public who'd like to just come and chat about anything you'd like to talk about.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, anyone else?
No, anything under miscellaneous?
Yeah, I just want to make some comments, if I could, on what was presented. And getting back, because I didn't want to cut you off, Evan, when we were going through the consent resolution. But, again, we're talking about how we're trying to be fiscally prudent and with respect to how we go about reducing government or trying to reduce costs. And one of the things which, again, we bring up all these controversies. I'm not a businessman. I can only maybe theorize how a business would operate if I had one. For example, if I owned a particular business and suddenly now the place I'm at, they decide to hike the rent up, or the building is now just not compatible with that particular business. Suddenly you decide to move, and now people are saying, well, how come this particular business is now over here? And they say, well, the rent went up, but now so maybe you have to drive over to that. Maybe it's your favorite restaurant. Maybe it's a place you shop at. I think we can get our head around that a lot better, because somehow everyone can relate to the fact that rents go up, and maybe you outgrow the space you're in, so there's a necessity to move. It just, for me, I just seem to think that people are making a hard leap in some instances. And again, I may not be the perfect analogy, but it seems you can get your head around having to drive to your favorite restaurant when they relocate, or your favorite business when they have to move because now they've increased their personnel and their business is expanding and they no longer can, the place that they're at can no longer maintain that capacity. So they move. So we seem to be okay with that. And maybe it's a financial decision because they're able to save money, whatever the case may be. Well, now you take that and you extrapolate that and you try to bring that to the town. And we want to talk about how we're going to shrink or make things a lot cheaper for the town and the taxes. And now we decide we have an infrastructure issue, cost to maintain businesses and a building, if you will. So you look at it as a cost analysis as a business, and you decide that the best fiscal thing to do is to relocate your operations. And I apologize if maybe I'm just having a hard time getting my head around the fact that we can accept when your favorite business has to move for all those particular reasons, but your town, is also trying to operate along the same mission statement, if you will, or along the same kind of process of being fiscally responsible. And suddenly that seems to be an issue. Now, we're also looking to shrink government because you had Ms. Greenwood here telling you how we're trying to consolidate our sewer and water districts so that we can reduce the cost on to the taxpayers. So we are doing this. So the answer to your question, Mr. Mastriani, is yes, we do look to shrink government.
Very good.
And I'd like to just add to that. I mean, one thing I did leave out when I talked about the budget a little bit, I am a business owner. I'm a small business owner. Spent 30-some years operating a family business, and we've gone through so many changes just to, in a business you have to change. The business climate changes. We did a facility change. We moved buildings. We outgrew the building we were in and we relocated. We built a new building and the tax assessment came in. It was crazy. We creeped our taxes. I know what it takes to run a business. I feel I can understand, everyone's concern in regard to what was put out first, that the business taxes are going to go up this much. But I can assure you that, again, I'm a businessman. We have another businessman, and actually everyone on this board is involved in their own business one way or another, and we get it. And we are not going to put out a budget that is
Irresponsible.
irresponsible. Yes, thank you. I mean, we get the concerns, we get the struggles of business.
Before we leave miscellaneous, thank you, Councilman Guidarelli. Just a little, some of these frustrations, okay? My family moved to Rotterdam in 1969. My father's brother had the business before my father, so, Tops has been in the Five Corners and my family since 1953. In 1970, the federal government was granting 90% of the cost of sewer, something that I wish there were more people here because some may remember, some may not, okay? So that meant that the town or municipality would come up with 10% of the cost, and then the federal government was writing you a check for the other 90%. I mean, Ms. Marco, I'm sure you remember, okay? Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because it's very important to a lot of these frustrations we hear today. Why can't we get more business in Rotterdam? We can't get more business in Rotterdam because that opportunity became a political pissing contest, to put it bluntly, okay? The current administration thought it was a good idea. The opposition had to find every which way but Tuesday to be against it. So in other words, I'm figuring in $1970, we could have done the whole town for $10 million. So which means we would have had a bond, $1 million, and the other $9 million was not a loan from the federal government, but a check. Here you go. Would have increased people's house tax maybe $16 a year or something, maybe even if it was $10 a month, okay? Well, let's look at the municipalities that took advantage of that. Guilderland, Colony, Malta, Wilton, all these communities that everybody says, why can't we be like them? Well, they took the opportunity of infrastructure and they capitalized on it. We'll never see that opportunity again. We had the same issue with Hamburg Street. The state came in to redo Hamburg Street. We had an opportunity to put sewers in while the shovel was being dug by the state of New York. So basically, for $4 million, we got a $12 million project. Yes, there are some concerns about traffic on Hamburg Street, but Hamburg Street looks a hell of a lot better than it did 10 years ago. So, yeah, to expand on what Councilman Guidarelli said, unfortunately, people don't look at change as how we can benefit from this change. They look at change as what is being taken away from me. And we miss that opportunity. And when businesses do come to our town, and when businesses ask us, well, you've got great water. Where's the sewer hookup? Oh, we have no sewers on that side of town. See ya. It frustrates us as well. We do not have the infrastructure. So now we're scrambling to put in infrastructure. And there's all these obstacles. So with infrastructure comes more business opportunities. And I want to see it as well. But sometimes you have to make some hard decisions and costly decisions so you can look 10 years, 20 years into the future for our children and our grandchildren. Anybody else under miscellaneous?
Well, in Vista, where the apartments are now, that everyone is complaining about, that are already in existence by the Trusco. There was an opportunity there for that land, for this town, to put a municipal center on. And again, another missed opportunity. So we could have had your town hall, your highway department, and your police, actually not highway department, excuse me, your town, your police department, and the police, and the court, all under one roof, all in this one municipal center, like a lot of other towns have, like Guilderland has, or what other town? Colony, having those municipal centers, where everything's all under one roof. Again, another missed opportunity. So now we have an issue with how much it's going to cost to maintain the buildings and repair, and that's what leaves us to have to make those hard choices and those hard decisions to have to do what we do.
Thank you. Okay, now we need a motion to re-enter executive session.
I make the motion.
Made motion by Councilwoman Miller Herrera.
For what reason?
I'm sorry?
For what reason?
We
for
were
continuation
at the beginning of the
grievance.
meeting, we were in executive session. We went into executive session to discuss 3 employee grievances and an improper practice charge. It's on the agenda here. And we had some time constraints, so we closed the executive session. We opened up the board meeting. This board meeting is still open. We are going to re-enter executive session, discuss these issues, and then come back and close the meeting.
Well, what letter of the law does that fall under for executive session?
Well, first of all, they're employee matters. So employee matters are discussed under executive session. Okay, so,
In order to enter an executive session, you have to describe in detail the letter. So if you were entering.
employee grievance number 1 regarding denial of out-of-title pay for employee, yes, it's right on the thing. Employee grievance number 2 regarding sick leave. Employee grievance number 3 regarding notice of discipline for employee T, and an improper practice charge regarding MEO heavy work grinding brush. It's right on the agenda.
I understand that, but you're not providing the proper language, is what I'm saying.
Well, I apologize, I'm not an attorney, so I'm doing the best I can. Somebody wants to correct me up here that knows more than I do?
You read it, no, you read it exactly.
Employee matters in that subject.
Yes, it's grievance, employee grievance. You read it.
That's the information I have under executive session, I have read it.
So we need a second.
Motion has been made, we need a second, please.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilman Guidarelli. Take the vote,
Mr.
please.
Christo?
Yes, to enter executive session.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor? And Mr. Thompson is absent.
Yes for me, I'm sorry if you asked me.
Okay, is that enough? Did you say yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, okay.